Yemen. At the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula, it's a country that sits at the crossroads of Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. It's one of the world's poorest countries. It's one of the driest, and it's also one of the newest. The Republic came into being in 1990, when the traditionalist North Yemen and Marxist South merged after years of border wars. 4 years later, civil war broke out, but the recently unified country survived. Since then, Yemen has been modernizing and opening up to the outside world. But internally, half its 20 million people still live in absolute poverty. And recent terrorist incidents have scarred the reputation of Yemen, scaring off foreign investments and tourism. This edition of Life reports from this emerging state as it undertakes a radical development program to combat poverty, guarantee security, and help it move into the 21st century. In 1994, Yemen had little in the way of infrastructure outside of the capital of Sana'a and the southern port of Aden. Its warring past and a population concentrated in 2 main cities and spread across thousands of isolated rural communities puts Yemen among the least developed countries in the world.
Yemen was known as a country where nothing works. The situation was so bad. The country went, unfortunately, during the last 40, 50 years through series of conflict cycles. So this did not help the government, to really develop the capacity of government agencies.
International aid in the mid-1990s was agreed as a way of promoting economic reforms and good governance. But the aid ended up being mostly urban-based, and the donor agencies found it caught up in the bureaucracy of government. It wasn't reaching the impoverished rural communities it was meant for. Yemen's situation, the spread of its population, the lack of infrastructure and the tensions of modernizing a country entrenched in traditional cultures, demanded a far more radical approach than that taken in many developing countries. In 1997, the Yemeni government sanctioned the setting up of a new poverty reduction program.
It is a government, in my estimation, that understands what modernization means, and they do want to change. They're not resisting change.
One of the most radical approaches taken by the government with the donor agencies is called the Social Fund for Development.
We apply the concept of community-driven development. We identify the underserved areas in the country, deprived areas in the country, and we go and talk to the people, and through the dialogue we help them to identify their own priorities, and we respond to their priorities.
The development programme's aim is to make aid work directly for the local communities at every level. Beyond the practical developments, its planned social reforms have implications that are revolutionising the role of women. Many newly educated young women from the cities are now working with the isolated rural communities. Lamis and Afra are 2 who are transforming not just their own roles, but their country's future.
Yemen lacks a lot of basic services, and the needs is huge. The need is huge in Yemen, especially in the remote and rural areas. The object of the social fund is to create basic social and economic services to the poor people in Yemen. Social services such as access to basic education, primary health care, water, access to water, to potable water.
We believe it's going to be really a long process. You cannot change attitudes, social attitudes, in 1 or 2 years. It takes really long time, and this is showing more and more with the program. We can pinpoint women who have a